You're listening to the Australian Hunting and Beyond podcast with Matt, where we talk about hunting, shooting, fishing, camping, and everything else that the great outdoors has to offer. Let's get into it. Alrighty, I've been waiting for this one. We've had a couple of misfires, no pun intended. And we've got Jay from Orange Accuracy here, mate. Thank you for coming on the podcast. How are you?
No, good, mate. No, all good. Yeah, we've had a couple of goes at it, but no, we got there.
Well, we've picked a cracking day for it. I think it's 42 degrees here. I'm not sure where it is where you are.
I think when I got off my bike on the way home from work, it was 38 degrees.
Yes, it's been a warm one. We was planning on going to the range today, and I was just like, I don't know if I want to be just out in the sun. I did that yesterday, and I just felt like I was cooking and said, is there a need for this? Do I need to go in this heat? Probably not. And then when you talk about the heat, obviously the hotter it is, the quicker the bullet travels, and you don't have it slowed down from the cold weather because it's more dense to travel through. So when you're sighting in and zeroing, you shouldn't probably do it in 40-degree weather because it's not really when you're going to be using it, especially in a hunting context. Isn't that right?
Well, it's a good time to get out and test it though. So if you've got to take your shot in 40-degree heat, you got to take your shot in 40-degree heat. So
true.
Better to know what that bullet's going to do downrange. So look, I think the biggest thing from the heat, more so than it affecting, muzzle velocity and then how thick that air is that you're shooting through, it just affects the shooter. There's so much, it just soaks the life out of it. You think about anything you're doing, whether you're out riding your bike, going for a run, lifting weights, whatever it is, that heat sucks the life out of you. And I tell everybody this, and of course, mate, it doesn't matter how big, strong, tough you are, shooting beats you up regardless. And then you add that environmental factor into it. It beats you up even more. So it's hard to stay on. Like say, shoot 15 5-round groups in that sort of heat. You're cooking yourself big time.
Well, you just fatigue quicker, don't you? Like one of the things I know about heat, and whether it be sport, especially like I remember golf, playing in the heat. You just had strokes on because by the time you get to the ball, even though you're walking, you're not really physically exerting yourself terribly. You just bug it.
Yeah, you did right, mate. It is tough. It's really tough, and it's more of a mental drain than what we realise. Yeah, but back to your point with the air getting thinner. Obviously as the air heats up, the molecules spread around, move around faster, and the air gets thinner, and you can shoot a lot further before you get to the edge of your transonic zone. So you can reach out that little bit further, absolutely. And that's all based around that air being a little bit thinner. But the other thing that comes from the heat is if you leave your ammunition in the sun and it warms and cooks up, now I've got a couple of cool stories, but most ammunition will get faster based on the hotter it gets. Now we've just done some testing not so long ago, a couple of courses ago. It's in the advanced course we do it, but we tested some ammo, and we seen, I can't remember which ammo it was now. I'll get back to you on that one. But anyway, we've seen no change in muzzle velocity through temperature. Yeah, so we heat rounds and cool rounds, and our rounds that we cool are in the esky in the ice, so they're frozen 1 degree. Yeah, and then the other ammo we had on the dash in the sun with the heater on, and we got it up to 60 degrees with the laser thermometer, and we see no change in muzzle velocity whatsoever.
Yeah, wow.
So there's a few powder companies out there, and I know that the Australian powders are world renowned for this, but they don't have muzzle velocity deviation through temperature. So they're very temperature stable, these powders these days. Yeah, which is pretty cool. Take something out of the equation.
Yeah, I mean that's a big thing, isn't it? Because like I've seen up to 40 feet per second faster just on temperature, like a degree or two difference on your ammo, and that can make a significant amount, especially if it's a lot hotter. If you've zeroed, not so much if you're shooting at 100 and 200. And I think this is, I always hear it, people come back and say 100 and 200, you don't have to worry about any of this stuff. And you're probably right because, if you're aiming for a dinner plate at 100 and 200, you're correct if you're shooting deer. But if you're reaching further out, which is what you're talking about and the skill of shooting, these little things play a very big difference in hitting a target or not hitting a target.
Oh, absolutely, they do. Yeah. So, like we during our courses we talk about the difference in where the shot will land based on muzzle velocity. Yeah. So, do this little exercise with the class where we change muzzle velocity only across 100 feet per second. And that 100 feet per second at 500 meters equates to 0.3 using it. So this is a 6.5 Creedmoor doing 2.650 and then 2.700 and then 2.600, sorry. Shooting a 140 grain ELDM usually. So it's a pretty average 6.5 round, yeah. And that 100 feet per second of muzzle velocity change at 500 meters only sees a 0.3 of a mil shift in elevation. So 0.3 of a mil is, 150 millimeters at 500 meters. So it's hard to see in the closer ranges, yeah. So, I mean, and it's all relevant too, yeah. So if that was a 22 LR, well, that'd be huge at 500 meters, yeah.
Yeah.
But, and again, if it was a slow 308, it'd be quite substantial. But, that fast, sleek 6.5, you don't really see it, so.
Well, you probably turned a few people off the podcast talking about the 6.5 Creedmoor already. Now, I'm a massive fan of it, and I actually good timing because me Irish mate Gaz, who will be listening, he's talking about with the new sort of laws and that are coming in. Now, I know people are sort of a little bit concerned here in New South Wales, going, "All right, I'm only going to keep 4. What am I going to keep?" I'll put my hand up, going, "I would like a." I've got my 6.5 Creedmoor in the chassis and going, I love the 6.5 Creedmoor. I love how flat it shoots. I love everything about it. Yes, people, there is flaws in it. It's not the miracle pill. Get it. Like, I think the marketing was a bit over the top, and that's why people sort of are so up in arms against it. But I like it. And I said to him, because he was considering the difference between a 270 and the 6.5, and I said, mate, yes, the 270's got a bit more power, probably hitting out. It's going a little bit faster, but I like the flatter shooting of the 6.5. I like the way the recoil. I like everything about it. Once you get, like, mine's a tack driver, and it's not I'm shooting a Hauer 1500. It's not an expensive rifle. It's in the Oryx MDT chassis. It's probably one of the cheapest setups you can get. And mate, I love it. It just shoots. And it's definitely MOA. Like, it's crazy how tight those grips can get. And I'm just shooting factory ammo as well. I've got nothing but sort of good things to say about it. And we were talking about it, saying I'd love one in the MDT HNT 26 chassis and be able to have that as the crossover for hunting and for target. Because it's something I definitely want to get into and have a bit of a play more, especially with the new changes. I've already got my target, as a genuine reason. So for me, it's not that, there's 10 rifles anyway. I'm still thinking about what I'm keeping where, what I'm adjusting and things like that, because it's, don't want to get into the bill because I want to talk about shooting, but like it's a bit of a pain in the ass for a lot of people.
Yeah. So with your Hauer 1500, we see those on our courses all the time. Yeah. And it blows me away. I've never seen a bad one. Yeah, you've obviously got listeners that have seen them, and there's pretty bad examples of every style, every make, model, whatever. Yeah, but for all of them, I've seen them. We see a lot. Yeah, and like you say, they are really well priced. And you find yourself a nice chassis, a nice stock, put it in there, you've got yourself a shooter. Yeah, and we see the 308s, the 6.5s, 6 mils all the time on courses, and they shoot lights out every time. Yeah, we haven't had a bad one. Yeah, I'm really impressed.
It's the action for me. The action's a bit clunky. Like, compared to my tickers, it's not as smooth. It's a bit clunkier. Like, that's the only real downside to the actual rifle itself, in my opinion. Like, the actual shooting ability of it.
Oh, they're incredible. Yeah. So, I wouldn't be like, if somebody offered me one, I wouldn't turn them down. They're awesome. Yeah, all the time in the world for them, and it blows my mind how good they are for how much money you pay. Like, I've got $10,000-$15,000 worth of rifles per rifle, which is ridiculous in the cabinet. But you buy Hauer 1500 and it'll compete with a $12,000 rifle that I've got set there. It's pretty cool, to be honest. For those guys that are getting into it to start with, they find out what they want. Now, with your caliber argument, I know there's the man barn and the all that sort of carry on, but when ABS brakes first come out, everybody rubbished them. Yeah, now everybody's got them. Nobody wanted cruise control. Now everybody's got it. You complain if you don't have it. Yeah, things get better over time, and all they did, and this is the weird thing about it. Yeah, 6.5 isn't new. It's been around
Yep.
for a long time, and if you're from, the Nordic area over Europe way or whatever, you've used it through World War One and Two. Yeah, like the caliber's been around for a long, long time. But you got to take your hat off to Hornady when they sort of flooded the market with it, because the US Department of Defense were looking for a new round, and they just flooded the market so hard with it that it's even in the DoD's white paper that due to the abundance of the round, they're going to go with the 6.5, not the 260 rim that they're also looking at the same time. So, you're dead right, mate. It's not the be all and end all of calibers, and no caliber is. Yeah. But what I will say, and what I have noticed through running training, whether that's orange accuracy at work, whatever, the 6.5 is easier to shoot, and people get better results from it. Yeah, everybody wants to take the biggest caliber they can, and take to their target, whether that's steel at a distance or animals at a distance, whatever they're hunting or whatever. But if you can't shoot it, you won't hit it. Yeah, so a 338 is a hard caliber to shoot. I don't care who you are. And I know some big bad dudes that can shoot it all day long. They're absolutely no dramas, but they'll tell you they've been beaten up by it as well by the end of the day. Yeah. So if you are going to train with a 338 all day, every day, your world's going to hurt eventually. But the 6.5 Creedmoor is just such an easy caliber to shoot, so you can have better technique, no dramas, and the thing is fast and flat. So, out to 1,200 meters, 6.5 Creedmoor's like, that's almost double what a 308's doing. Like when you compare, factory sort of ammo, like I say, let's say a 168 Hornet ELDM, and then you compare it with a 140 grain ELDM and 6.5, like that 6.5 is probably going to double your range of your 308 straight out of the box.
Which is depending what you want to do with it. And I get this is the argument. And I think it's sort of crazy to me anyway, comparing rounds and trying to say one's better than the other, because depending on what job you're trying to do with it, they all have their place. And people like different things. It's the same as, it's sort of the argument I've heard with, I talk about sort of with a trophy. For me, trophy hunting is comparing yourself to yourself, because if I shoot something on public land and you shoot something on private land, I don't think they should be compared personally, because they're different elements. You could have let it grow. You could there's all these different things to it. And it's not like, it's not like a game of tennis where you're versing somebody else. And it's something I've never sort of got my head around from that side. I like the idea of trophy hunting because from my perspective, I want to get better than what I got. And that's the challenge to it is, getting that bigger buck because I've outsmarted him or whatever. I don't know where your buck came from. I don't know how you shot it. You could have been walking, nothing happened, and it just popped out in front of you. You didn't really do anything. You were just shuffling along and there it was. Like, they're so different. So it's a very interesting one. I don't get why people go, oh, my 6.5 Creedmoor's better than the 308. I have both. I love both. Like, I don't get it. Yep. I love my 22. I love me 2.3. Correct. Yep. I love them all. Like, they're there for different reasons, but I love shooting all of them, and there's a specific job for each of them to do. Correct, mate. All right, Jay. So I think you've touched on it, but let's flip over. Orange Accuracy is the brand. Yep. Tell our guys, if they haven't heard, what it is, what you guys do over there at Orange Accuracy.
Yep. All right. So first of all, mate, we're not in Orange. We're in Canberra. We're based out of Canberra. I get a lot of phone calls saying, hey, can we come to the range at Orange? It's like, no, we're not Orange, New South Wales. My surname is Orange. Yeah, that's where the name comes from. Anyway, I've got a professional background in rifle shooting. I'm fortunate enough to be taught by some very high-level instructors for my job. And being fortunate enough now to work with some really high-level dudes, and I also get to hang out with I'm pretty fortunate. I get to hang out with all the real high-level dudes around the country, whether that's work, competition, also from guys from overseas and all that sort of stuff. So I found myself gaining quite a lot of knowledge. And then when I was at the local ranges, the stuff that was common sense to me in my world was not there. when I say, I shouldn't say common sense, like I don't want to hack on anybody's, knowledge or abilities, but stuff that you get taught from day one, guys haven't heard before, and they've been shooting for 10 years. And again, there's no slight on anybody either. So I found that I really enjoyed teaching, and then I put together Orange Accuracy, the business. I got it all done properly through the ACT Firearms Registry, and had all the courses properly gazetted and all that sort of thing. Got all the appropriate tickets and insurances, and then started rolling them out, the courses out, to help guys out that were trying to reach out there a little bit further. That most guys don't have enough time to go to the range every weekend and practice and train with clubs and all that sort of stuff. So 2-day, 3-day packages, depending on how much time you got. You come down to Canberra, or we now run them out of Castlemaine in Victoria, and also up at Rockhampton in Queensland, thanks to the guys up there at the Outpost. Appreciate that. And we get around the country and teach what we can teach. So it's when we say long range courses, every course starts at 100 meters, and I'll make the statement all the time: long range shooting is only 100 meters shooting just further away. And now that starts, and then the argument starts. Yeah, it's like, no, it's not. It's completely different. It's like, no, well, if you can't shoot proficiently at 100 meters, it doesn't matter what you do at 1,000 meters. You're just going to get lucky if you're hitting your target. Yeah, so we do a lot of training and around technique and rifle setup and all that sort of stuff before we really get into the external ballistics and ballistic software, and then getting back at distance and calibrating the software out, and starting to talk about wind, reading wind, seeing wind, and what it means to your shot, and why it means what it means, where it means, and and it just grew. So that was in 2017, run our first course, and we're running running 9 to 10 courses a year now, which is pretty cool. And I think the best thing about it, mate, is I'm learning more and more as I go along, and both not only in teaching, but also in all the different little arts of wind calling and ballistics and all the rest of it. It's been really cool for my shooting as well.
Well, I think it's something I'm very interested in, obviously, and I wasn't always into hunting. I started I'm 42 now. I started when I was about 20, and that was just punch and paper. I always joke around that for a long time I didn't even know you could hunt in Australia. So I loved the shooting side of it, and just, I never thought, I'm not a big maths person. I'm a teacher, I'm a PE teacher, and I've never been a really big maths person. I'm okay at it, can get through pretty easily, but it's not something I'd just have a passion for until I got into that shooting and, started to talk about ballistics and, the trig behind it and things like that. And then was like, this is now interesting because I actually care about what I'm doing with it.
Yeah. Imagine if your maths teacher had told you you'd be a better shooter if you understood trigonometry.
Oh, mate, I joke around. One of the boys in my faculty, he's sort of proficient. He taught maths for a long time, and I sort of always stir him up because he's come back to PE saying, you're in the better subject. But I do have a soft spot now for maths just because I know you need it to shoot.
Yeah. That's a real funny one too. I say, I'm fortunate enough to have, like I said, have some really high-level instructors and still get to sit in front of some really high-level instructors. And the math is always the thing. But now with the stuff that, is coming out of, Todd and Colby out of Accuracy First and places like that, you don't even have to be good at math anymore. And I find that really weird when you're in, the theory part of the class and you're telling, you're trying to explain, say, like a wind theory or wind formula, and you've wrote out the math on the board and none of it is right. Like 1 + 1 = 3, and then divided by 2 is 1.5. And plus 6 is but it doesn't matter as long as you're getting yourself within like a tolerance, to shoot it. So everybody gets stressed that they're not doing the math correctly because 1 + 1 doesn't = 3. We all know that, but you divide it by 2 and it's 1.5. They're like, hold on a minute, we shouldn't have even started with 3. But it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, all we're trying to do is get to the result as fast as we can, so that they can make that shot in the wind that they've just felt and made the call in. So in a competition setting, that's really important. And for you guys out hunting, when we're out hunting, it's always really important as well that you make that wind call and shooting that wind. So yeah, it's math though. Eh? It's a lot of the guys that I hang out with like to call it cowboy math, and those people who are listening that will know where that's coming from.
Well, it's starting to be a skill that's getting dropped off because you've got so many, like your ballistics calculators now, and you've got apps that punch in. I mean, hell, you talk about the scopes now. I just recently bought a Hick Micro Alpex, and it's got a built-in ballistics calculator.
Yep.
You're sitting there going, it's taking a little bit of the fun away. Well, for me anyway, I know there's people out there that love it. They don't want to know about the math. They just want to, I point here now and shoot. I like to be a bit more old school. I think there's more fun in it and more skill, and that's the bigger and better challenge for me anyway. But it's where do you stop, right? Like the ballistics calculators, the Kestrels, you've got so much there now to, I guess, help you.
Yes.
It's putting it all together. And sometimes it does make me question, is it making it a bit more confusing because you've checking the Kestrel, punching in this, what's my data saying, what's my dope saying, like you've got all these things, and there's, rather than getting back to some of the basics.
Yeah. So, mate, I know that that's a big thing. People are like, I don't have time to run a Kestrel. I don't have time for this. I don't have time for that. Whereas everyone's got a pair of binos on them when they're, whether they are competing or hunting. Yeah, they've got time for that. But with what you're saying, mate, with the applied ballistics or field firing solutions or Street Lock Pro or whatever it is, what it does is in my mind, it gives everybody a better understanding of why things do what they do. Yeah. So it's kind of, like if you go to the pub now and you're having a conversation or an argument about anything, all you do is pull your phone out and get the answer. Yeah. There's no pub chat's almost dead because of it. Yeah. Same with the Kestrel. Yeah. Somebody's going to tell you like, this will happen when the density altitude shifts 50 meters. I'm like, is that right? And then get my Kestrel out and plug it all in and go, here it is. No, it doesn't. Yeah, or yes, it does, or vice versa. Yeah. So it gives us those understandings, and we've got better knowledge for it. So for example, we've got better for it. So when you come to like our LRS1 course, you're going to spend 2 days going, holy shit, how do I really make this work? And by the end of the whole plan, by the end of those 2 days, is that you understand how to run the thing by yourself. So you and your partner, the guy or girl you're shooting with, just look after yourself. And Stu that helps me out, me and him just put our feet up and enjoy it. Now when it comes to the advanced course, which is a 3-day program, by the end of halfway through day 2, your Kestrel doesn't come out of your pocket. Yeah, so we use everything we've learned from the Kestrel and put it into a couple of different formulas, and now you're making wind calls out of your head. You're making elevation calls to within easy 0.1, if not 0.2, on targets when you're talking about hunting deer or whatever. Even 500-600 meters, and this is something we'll have to get into too with the ethics of shooting animals at distance. And I know there's a lot of different. Anyway, so if you can make a call within 0.2 on a target that's the size of a red deer at 600-700 meters, well, I think it's time to get after it. You know what I mean? So, but by the end of the 3rd day, your Kestrel is very important, yes, but you don't need it. You walk up and down a 900 meter range, and we'll just stop wherever, put you on your tripod or put you over your pack or whatever it is at the time, and you'll make the elevation wind call out of your head, and you'll hit the target every time.
All right, you touched on it there. I'm glad you did. We can go straight in there. That was a good segue. The ethics of it. Everyone's different here, and I am a big believer personally is do it within your ability. Now, if your ability is 100 meters, then do it at 100 meters. If you go out to 200 and you can't hit paper at 200, or you're not accurate, you're not shooting MOA at 200, then we're at a different level here. You shouldn't be shooting, in my opinion.
I agree, mate. Yeah. So for me, the ethics behind taking a shot, like everybody wants to talk about what's a round really going to do at that distance. Well, I've got a mate in the States who dropped a whitetail at a mile with a 308.
Yeah, right.
The thing didn't move, yeah? So I haven't done the math on the energy that was remaining in it, but the studies that I've been part of, fortunate enough to be hanging around with, doesn't really come down to projectile weight. It comes down to the speed and the makeup of the projectile, yeah? So You can push it. You need to push it as fast as you can, so it does the most devastation once it enters, its target.
Yep.
Now, with the ethics, once you've got your projectile squared away, that's one thing. The next thing is how good is your elevation call? Like 99% of the reason we miss the target, well, not 90, the biggest reason we miss targets, especially long range targets, is we get the distance wrong. Yeah. So if you get the distance wrong by 20, 30 meters at 200 meters, it's not a big deal if you're shooting a 6.5, let's say.
Yep.
But if you get that 20, 30 meters at say 750 meters, now you got a problem.
Yep.
Yeah. So straight away you need a good rangefinder and you need to believe in it. Yeah. You need your software to be calibrated so you're getting good elevation data to within 0.1, 0.2 of what it actually needs to be. That's a big deal. And then the next big part of it is how good do you call wind? Yeah. What's my wind call really? I can't just hold cross here. Like if you're at 800 meters and you're shooting 308 or a 6.5, at that distance, you've got to start thinking about, your rated twist and what's spin drift going to look like? Yeah. Is it 0.3? Is it 0.4? Is that going to walk you off the hit zone of that target you need? Am I going to, am I holding into the wind? Am I holding with the wind? Is my wind call within 1 mile an hour, 2 mile an hour? I think that is the two big factors that come into the ethics: how good your elevation call is, and how good you are at calling wind, and then applying wind to that target.
Yeah, and I think that's I always see people wanting to brag at going how far they can shoot something, and again, we're all different, and this is where it's an interesting one because I don't sort of believe hunting is a competition. I don't see that as someone that, as I said, I'm a PE teacher, been in a mile of different sports at various representative levels. I've never seen hunting as a competition against anybody else other than me and the animal, essentially. So it's very interesting when I see people out there going, I shot this at this distance and that sort of brag. And it's like, that's great. If your ability can do that. And because I see both sides, people then rag on them. People then go good on you. Like it's both sides. But if you can do it and your ability's there and you're confident to do that and not inflict any harm on that animal, I'm all right, go, whatever, that's fine. If you're not and you're just taking those pot shots or you don't know what you're doing and you're just risking injuring an animal for the sake of it because you want to brag that you shot at a certain distance, then I've got sort of more the issue in how we're doing it, because what are we there to achieve is sort of the thing. So I know it's one for me is I don't spend enough time at the range to shoot those longer distances, and I need I'll chat to you off air, but I want to come down and do one of your courses because I want to be the best shooter I can be and be dialed in as best I possibly can. Does that mean I'm going to go out and shoot a deer at a kilometre? No. I can pretty much say I'll never shoot a deer at a kilometre. I'll tell you now. But do I want the ability to know that I can hit a target at a kilometre? That would be amazing. Yes. I'd be really curious and see if I was that good to be able to do it. I don't know. I want to know. And that's that target side of it that I find fascinating as well, and how I can improve my form and how, everything that comes about it. So I love the fact that you are doing courses like this. And I know, shout out to me mate Frodo, he I don't know if he did your one. I know he did one. And he said it was one of the best things he's ever done. And his shooting just got so much better from it and being able to hit those targets. I think it was by the second day hitting further out targets, and he loved it, and swore by it and constantly does. Anytime you talk about it, he's like best thing he ever did.
Yeah. No, well, you think about driving a car, like basically everybody drives a car. But can they drive a car as good as Craig Lowndes?
No.
Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And it's got nothing to do with Craig's car, yeah?
Correct.
He's put the time and effort in, training to be that good. Yeah. And I think it's the same with the shooting. Look, I know people are really time poor these days. Everything's, tough, but the more time you can spend at the range before you go and hunt, the more successful you'll probably be with your shots anyway. But the more confidence you'll have in making that shot. And look, I know I make money out of people coming to train with us, but I can't swear highly enough about how good it is to go and train. Like I'll go and train with other people around the world, here in Australia as well, as often as I can. Once, twice, 4 times a year, to stay on top of it, because you have to. If you're not training, how do you be as good as you need to be? Yeah. And like you're saying with the long range stuff, mate. Like I know that everybody's not going to shoot a target at 1,000 meters, 1,200 meters, or whatever. But if you can, how easy is a 200-meter target?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Like your confidence goes through the roof. The understanding you have to be able to make a 1200-meter shot with a 300, 308, or even a 300 Win Mag, yeah, you have to have some really good understanding of ballistics and wind and all that sort of stuff. And that carries over to every distance, whether that's 1200 meters or 100 meters.
Well, that's the challenge, isn't it? There's a lot of people that go, I just don't see the point in punching paper. And it's, I look, again, everything's individual. If you don't want to do it, don't do it. But for me, there is that challenge of being able to try and crack that kilometer and saying, I have, as you said, you dialed in on your wind, your elevations, everything that you need, your ballistics, all that to then hit that target. And there is a skill set to that. And that comes with obviously knowing your stuff, training for it, and being able to do that. And not just do it once. I'm talking about being able to do it consistently, because, every dog has their day, but being able to do it consistently, because that shows that you have acquired that skill.
Yep.
It's definitely, look, I love both. And I've said this multiple times. A lot of my mates just have their hunting, genuine reason here in New South Wales, and they're just hunting, and they don't get why they go to the range just to make sure the zero's right, so if they go out, they're not missing. That's it. I go to the range because I actually thoroughly enjoy shooting, and I like the challenge that comes with it. My biggest problem, and I've sort of said this a few times, is that my local range, the one I go to, it's bench rest, and it's only bench rest. And I don't find that as practical as it needs to be in getting into those different positions, especially if you're going to do it for hunting, because you're not sitting on a bench when you're pulling the trigger on an animal. You're going to be out in the bush somewhere, aren't you? So there's that element that you don't get to try those different positions. Now, I know there's another range that's sort of close to me that you can do it at. So for that's a good thing. But, for me, being time poor, being 15 minutes away, happy days, as opposed to traveling nearly an hour to try and get in. So it's one of those things you sort of got to jump off. It'd be great if all the rangers gave you the ability to be able to, get on the ground and shoot from prone.
Yeah. No, mate, with that, so, and I make sure this occurs on all the courses, whether it's an LRS course or like a Sunday school that we run once a month, or, the advanced course. Everybody, I force them to dry fire various positions and techniques and whatnot, because look, under dry fire, anything that happens in that scope, like whether that reticle bounces off target or whatever it is, that's only your fault. It's not the hammer hitting the firing pin that causes the little hop in the reticle when you dry fire. That's you, and you need to find a way to make that not happen. I tell everybody on the course too, like, I can't tell you exactly how you need to press a trigger to stop that from happening. You need to work that out for yourself. I can't see through your eyes. I can't feel through your hands. Can't feel through your cheek, that sort of thing. So when you figure that out under dry fire and then you take it into your live fire, it's a game changer. Like this, on the PRS circuit, I shot it for a while a few years ago now, and there's a couple of guys that are like absolute jet shooters, and the only thing they do to practice is dry fire. They dry fire every position. They dry fire, all the ridiculous barricades that they use. But they were slick when it came to live fire. Dry fire is so good for your shooting. So if you can't, and not just for you, mate, but for for everyone out there who might be listening, if you've got 20 minutes to drive to the range and then 10 minutes to shoot and then 20 minutes home, that's 50 minutes. You could dry fire at home for a whole 50 minutes, and it'd be way better than the 10 minutes live fire you just did.
Yeah, well, that's great advice. It's one of those ones that you do. You can work out whether you got a flinch. You can work out a few different things there. One of the things I found the hardest was getting in the same position. Is getting that cheek in the same position so that when you zero, you crosshairs, just because if you're out slightly, if you're a little bit, a couple of mils to the right, a couple of mils to the left, because that cheek's not sitting there, and, it can be a big difference when you're zeroing. That's one thing I've really found hard. And then especially zeroing, I've started to go off a bipod more than bags so that it's a little bit more stable and repeatable. I found with bags, they move around a little bit more. From that perspective, trying to make sure it's as accurate as possible. And limited wind. There's so many elements to just doing that zero. Like it's, and you haven't got an indoor range that's 100 meters. So we don't up here, not that I know of. So there's all these sort of little things. And I get it when people go, oh, you don't need that, shooting a deer at 100, 200. You don't. But if you're wanting to be a good shooter out to those further distances, like in PRS and things like that, you've got to have that nailed and dialed in really good.
Yeah. Well, you think about the amount of shots you make in your hunting over 12 months.
Oh.
Look,
if you're a state forest hunter, my years in the state forest going maybe 10 times. Jeez, the first few when I was a crap hunter, I probably didn't pull the trigger at all. Maybe lucky once, like in a 12-month period. So you're not getting better at that.
No, you're not. No, you get better at your hunting, 100%.
Yes, but not the actual trigger side. Yeah.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. So, it is a funny thing. I know there's heaps of guys that just want to go and hunt and shoot, and 100 meters will do them. But you can always be better. Your gear can always be better. Your technique can be better. The way you move through the bush can be better. The way you strap your gear to your pack can be everything can be better. Yeah. And for those guys that are really driven to do that, training with your rifle before you go is, it's huge. And then sometimes you can't train with the rifle that you hunt with because they're running those really light barrels or like you shoot a 3-shot string, the barrel heats up, it loses precision, and now you think it's all your fault, and then you're kicking yourself all the way home. Whereas perhaps you should have just taken your 22 to the range and trained the shooting aspect of it. You zeroed your hunting gun and then gone home. You know what I mean? Back to your point with the zero, it's something we do during a course. The first lot of shooting we do is checking people's zeros, and everybody thinks we're actually checking their zero. We're actually running them through technique drills. But so the first few shots is making sure their zero's on paper, and then we get into it from there and we do some drill stuff. And by the end of that sort of hour and a half of shooting, we zero their rifles. They don't realize that we were not only doing technique training at the time, doing drills and whatnot, we were watching the full shot of their, where their rifle was shooting through each drill to then go back and say, hey, righto, here's your actual zero. Yeah, so I think one of the biggest problems is that people don't go to the range and train. They go to the range and check zero, or they go to the range and do load development. They don't actually work on their technique, and then they blame the gun and the ammo. You know what I mean? It's expensive, yeah. So that's probably why you do it with the 22. But just going to the range to check zero, I think, it's good for when you're going hunting, but it's not making you a better shooter. You know what I mean?
Well, I think this is the issue around it, right? Like if you're not into PRS or you haven't done any training courses, your firearm safety course is not teaching you these things, right? No. It's teaching you the very, very basics of shooting. And then you're sort of there to figure it out all on yourself. And it's probably the easiest it's been nowadays with YouTube courses like yourself that you run to upskill. But, you got to think there's a lot of people out there that didn't get any opportunity. Like YouTube hasn't been around forever, and there's a lot of people that don't know how to use it or don't want to use it. I get that too. As you said, you only started the course up in 2017. So, that's only 8 years old. If you go back 20 odd years, as I said, I think I had my firearms license when I was 20 off the top of my head. Geez, a long time now. That's 22 years ago. When you're first getting into it, I know when I first got into it, mate, there was nothing there. Now, unless you have exposure, whether it be through work, whether it be through whatever, a mate that actually knows what they're doing and teaching you, it becomes very, very difficult. And I see this as, all the sports I've played as, for years there. I played when I was younger. I was a state tennis player, and I was then a tennis coach, and same sort of thing. When when I'd be coaching, I'd be doing games to train technique that the students didn't even know what I was doing and how they got about it, and they didn't know, but they were upskilling, and then their technique, bingo, at the end they got it, and they didn't even know what we were doing. And if they didn't come to that lesson, they wouldn't have got that. And that's the problem with it, is when you talk about people getting into shooting, there's not really like that. I'd like to see it to be more mandated, to be honest, is that go out and actually go and learn how to shoot properly and everything you need to know prior to doing it. Because even you go to just purchasing a firearm, cleaning a firearm, There's a lot of people that have zero idea how to do that, and then they're relying on YouTube. I've seen some great resources on YouTube and some not so, some more questionable, but if you're a beginner, and this is what I constantly preach on here about having a growth mindset and getting better. And I always think that no matter who we are, we can always get better at what we do. And if you're getting out there and you're a beginner, no, I'm not putting anyone down, because you could watch something and it's the biggest load of rubbish in the world. But if you have no background knowledge that is wrong, you're probably going to buy into it and go, yeah, that makes complete sense. That sounds good. I'm going to do that. I'd love to see it be the practical element be a lot more technique driven, and really have people understand what they're doing and be able to operate a firearm way better, and all the basics, like way more than what we sort of currently do. And I know there'll be people jumping up and down saying we don't want more regulations and all that. And I get that side of it too. But I don't think it's a bad thing when people, like, it's the same as a driver's license. I don't know what they're doing in the ACT, but here in New South Wales, I'm absolutely shocked. I know we're going off on a tangent here, but I'm definitely shocked. And because, I was teaching my students, being a PE teacher, obviously we teach road safety. Yeah. And I was teaching, and we're talking about, you guys have to get over 90% to, pass your driver's course, because there's 3 sections. I think it's 3 off the top of my head. And the last section, you can't get any wrong. And then there's this section there. It's like, so you guys have to study. You say you can't study, and you don't, you're happy with getting 50% in the subject, but you got obviously 90% there. And I was like, so is it just because you're actually putting the effort in? It's something that's important to you? And they turned around and said, it's now online, sir. I was like, what? They're like, it's online. You can sit there. It's an open book test.
Yep.
I was like, what? And they're like, yep, you can just do it online, sit at home. You can have the manual there. You can even have it on a PDF and search up the answers as you go. I was like, well, that's not teaching anybody anything. No wonder we got terrible drivers around here at the moment. Like, I'm guessing that's probably one of the reasons. It's gone the opposite way that I'd rather have it. And as I said, I know there'll be people jumping up and down saying, no, that's not fair. People might not have the money. They might not have the access. They might have to travel. And I get all those things. I'm not against it. I don't know how we get around it to make it more accessible, make it free. I'd love to see some of our big bodies that make a lot of money start to, fund back into that of making better shooters, and get those courses and drop the price of the courses, and do a bit more in that space, because it's only going to be beneficial for everybody in the long run.
100%, mate. Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. The ticking the box you get to get your license, like, it is what it is, but it was one of the driving factors behind kicking this off. Yeah, to give back what I've been given. Yeah, so. And I hope that's happening. Yeah, and I hope people are passing it on too. Yeah, like, it's not like all the stuff that I'm teaching is not exclusively come out of Jay Orange's brain. Yeah, the shooting fundamentals or the marksmanship principles were actually found in the tomb of a pyramid in Egypt. Yeah, so they're thousands of years old. Yeah, shooting fundamentals, archery fundamentals are all the same. Yeah, we've just mastered how to teach them, and then we've mastered a bit of science around the external ballistics and internal ballistics and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, I hope people are sharing it, because it's like my shooting initiation, if you will, back home in New Zealand, was with Grandad, and he said, right, that goes in your shoulder. You look through that and just hold on, you'll be right. It won't hurt. Press the trigger. You know what I mean? So, and Grandad was New Zealand Army too, so he'd been professionally taught as well. So, but we've just got so much better at teaching it over the years, and there's been so many amazing instructors come and go over the years that, the knowledge has to get passed on, that, so those guys on the range don't have to have the silly argument about the, density altitude shifting 50 feet, or, you need to stop flinching by, doing X. Or the other beauty that I've heard quite a bit, and I take the mickey out of it all the time, is you just need to aim harder and lock on.
Stare harder?
Just aim harder and lock on.
Look, everyone has their own ways of doing things, and it's funny because, I always say this to my teachers is I don't mind how, if you've got the lesson, if you've got to get to X, I don't care which way you get to X as long as you get to X. If you go out on a tangent to left, tangent to right, I don't care. As long as you achieve what your, objective is at the end of the lesson, it's been a successful lesson. And I think the same with shooting. And, if you have something that works for you that's not technique perfect or whatever, but it works for you, then that's a good thing for you. It's one that I find very interesting that sometimes it does more harm than good. I think about golf, and that I've seen many mates, including one of my, he's my best man, spend a lot of money on coaches, and he's still shooting 32 over. And, I always take the mickey out of him, how many thousands of dollars. But he's changed his grip that many times. He's changed his stance that many times. He's done all these different things, and he's probably worse off than when he started. And it's about what works for you and what's, when I talk about technique, especially in tennis before, I have what people would say is a terrible grip because I have a very Western grip, the way I hold it because of the way I rotate the racket head. But for me, I can put a heap of topspin, hit the ball a lot harder and know that it's going in, as opposed to there's an offset, which is for the back end. But for me, I can deal with it. And it worked really well. For me to then try and change, and I did for a bit there, and it didn't work. Like it wasn't the result wasn't there. So you've got to sort of take the good with the bad. You've got to see what works for you, because I'm guessing from you teaching a lot of different people, you would see a lot of different ways in what works for different people and being able to adapt to that and just hone in on that and perfect how they're going, as opposed to throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah, no, you're dead right, mate. So we get a lot of people on course that, perhaps can't get their body into that perfect position behind the rifle when you're prone on the ground. Well, through injury or, like lack of mobility or whatever it is. Yeah.
Yep.
You just got to work with it. You got to take it and make it as good as it can be. Like you can't be uncomfortable for a whole day and be a good shooter. Yeah, you need to find, like you say, what works for you. And I'll give you all the tips and tricks in the world that I've picked up or know or been given over the years. But if they don't work for you, they don't work for you. Don't do them. Yeah, like I was very fortunate when I was in the States training. A gentleman taught me how to dry fire properly, and through that dry fire, I learned to get rid of this hop in the crosshair. Yeah, and it was. If the way I break the knuckle on my finger on the trigger blade, yeah, and I'll teach that, and then watch guys, and some I shouldn't say guys and girls will use that or try that, and then you can actually see their shooting deteriorate. Now, sometimes it's them breaking it down and then picking up and going a little bit better, but other times you've just got to cut them off and say, no, just can you go back to what you were originally doing, yeah? Because you'll be better for it. Just keep what I've taught you in the back of your mind and do what you're doing because it was better beforehand. You know what I mean? Like, and everyone's different. Yeah, everybody's body's different. Everybody's breathing techniques different. Like everything. Yeah. But you can't force. There's not a mold you can force onto everybody. That's for sure.
And I think that's where I love the idea of it. Like all sports, is that especially the individual sports like shooting, is you have to do it the best for you, and that you are not, yes, in your PRS you're going against other people, but you're sort of going against yourself and trying to just be the best you can be. Now, the best you can be might never be number one in the shooting community. That's all right. Like, as long as you're getting better and you're, trying to achieve that pinnacle. It's like weightlifting. I had to laugh. One of my mates, he stirred me up saying, the dumbbells I was lifting were his beginning ones. And I was like, okay, that's, all right. For me, that's a good weight. So for my progress, I'm happy with what weight I'm lifting. I'm never really happy. I'll be honest. I want to go bigger, but like, that's the drive of being better in whatever you do.
Correct.
I'm not going to lift what, people that are way bigger than I am, and they're going to do it. I know this. Like that's where I don't know, maybe it's my old age, and as I keep getting older, it always used to be competitive against other people, and now it's more I'm turning that inwards, going, I want to be better against me. That's the most important thing, that I'm the best version of me, and the better I can do it, whatever I take up or whatever I do, that's the key for this. But
No, I always ask the question in class, does anybody know who the current PSR, not PRS, but PSR Australian champion is? And nobody can answer that
Just
question.
crickets. Yeah.
So what does it matter? Yeah, like as long as you enjoy what you're doing, mate. I think that's the best thing about shooting. As long as you enjoy it, that's all that matters. Yeah.
Yeah. And even then, when, even if they did know, go back 6 years, who was it? Like, most people just don't know that. Like, they have to be a pretty dead set. Either got incredible memory to be able to recall that. And, I think about my hobbies that I absolutely love. I couldn't tell you who won the Super Bowl 5 years ago. Like, correct. I know roughly who's won in the last couple of years. I couldn't tell you who got the MVP. I don't know. Like, I don't watch for that. As bad. I'm sure there's people out there jumping up and down going, I know. But I just want to pick your brain on one more thing. Is the chronographs. Geez, they've changed a lot. You've got your Garmin bullet trackers now, your old school chronograph, which is what I've got with the two antennas shooting through the middle. What do you prefer? Because I've used both, and I'm sort of I don't know. Like, they both have their pros and cons. The bullet tracker makes me a little nervous because obviously with the chronograph, it's got to be back a couple of meters so that the discharge out of your barrel doesn't impact the ballistics or the speed, I should say, measuring the speed. With the bullet tracker, how accurate is that getting if you've set it up the wrong way and it's not focusing on it? And where is it picking up the speed at what distance? What are your thoughts?
So first things first, Matt, with the chronograph, what are you using it for?
Just to get that ballistic data.
Okay, all right. So if guys are relying solely on a chronograph of any description to build their ballistic data, don't get me wrong, so like your Garmin Zero or the Lab Radar XE, I think it is now. There's a couple others out there. Like, their data is phenomenal, and you add that to, say, something like Applied Ballistics, and you get really, really good data. But there's always errors in something. Whether that's your Zero could be half a caliber low, you wouldn't change that. All these little things that could be a problem, like your bore height that you put into the system could be out by 3 mil or something like that. All these little errors are going to stack up on it, and regardless of the chronograph data you got, you're going to get the wrong answer. So with good ballistic software, for example, Applied Ballistics, you calibrate the software to what the bullet does. And you do that as far away as you can, or as close to the transonic zone as you can. So you are actually going to tell the computer what the bullet did. Because the bullet doesn't get a vote, it doesn't lie. It's done what it's done based on science. Density, altitude, and wind, and time of flight. It's all this sort of carry on. So that's fixing your ballistic data. Now with a chronograph, now that I don't think you can get a bad one. The FX Outdoor, none of them are bad. As long as they're consistent, and now you can check that you've got good ammunition. So chronographs are a good starting point for ballistic data. 100%. Couldn't agree more with that. And there's some features that are going to come out the next few months that are going to give us a few more things to play with downrange with chronographs as well. But that'll be cool to see in the future. But with them, you can say that you've got good ammo, like whether you've hand loaded it, or you've bought it over the counter. And the stuff over the counter today has just got so good that if we all stopped hand loading and buying it over the counter, it'd be as cheap as it is in the States. And so you can run your ammo over that chronograph and say, look, it's got a good extreme spread. A lot of guys want to talk standard deviation, but in the hunting world and the competing world, extreme spread, you want to know what your fastest bullet's going to do, and you want to know what your slowest bullet's going to do, because you don't know which one's coming out of the magazine. Do you know what I mean? So extreme spread's a big one for us on our courses, but that's what we're using our chronographs for more and more now, mate, as opposed to building ballistic data. They're a good starting point, and if you're only going to shoot out to 300-400 meters, 100%, they'll do you good. But if you're trying to push the boundaries a little bit like we do on courses, and with our trips and whatnot, so you need to calibrate your software, for sure.
Yeah, I think that's a big one. I've noticed in the more expensive, the Hornady precision, it's pretty on. You're not getting much difference, but then throwing down the Winchester Deer XP, that's a hit and miss, that one. Which and that's part of it. And I think that's where the big one I've sort of been talking to a mate. Do I get into hand loading? The factory ammo is pretty good, especially the more top ends.
Yep.
I found the Seiko stuff really good, especially my tickets. So it's one of those ones I think that I can do a few more things on the back end, as you said, technique, making sure that, using applied ballistics a lot better, things like that. Fixing those smaller errors and probably get just as good as results if doing, rather than that chronograph. But I think I do like playing with that data too and seeing what's happening and seeing the speed and where it ends up downrange too.
Absolutely.
And that's it's just it's a learning curve. It's just so much fun that you can just be doing. You can spend hours and hours, or you could be doing 2 or 3 days of your course, and still probably walk away going, "Hey, I've got so much more to learn." But that's a great starting point in that way. So, but Jay, mate, I've really appreciated you coming on. Guys, look up Orange Accuracy. I know. Hopefully, I'll be able to get down to one of your courses in the next 12 months, and
awesome,
hopefully meet you in person. And I know you'll be able to help me out a lot with what I do. So it'll be a good learning curve for me.
We'll certainly try, mate. Yeah, we'll certainly try. But anytime, mate, you're welcome anytime, you know that. And anything I can help you with, or any of your listeners with, don't be afraid to reach out. So, like I'm on the socials and I've got a website, the whole thing. So if I can help, I can help. And if I can't, I'm pretty fortunate. I know a few people in the industry that if I can't get an answer, they can generally help me out somewhere from around Australia, around the world. So more than happy to help me.
Love it. I'll put the links in the show notes, guys, so it will take you straight over to the socials. But all right. Thanks again, Jay, and listeners. Bye for now. You've been listening to the Australian Hunting and Beyond podcast with Matt. Thanks for tuning in and can't wait to catch you next time. But in the meantime, if you want more, you can find it at linktr.ee/Australian Hunting and Beyond. That will give you our YouTube, Instagram, X, Facebook, you name it. We'll catch you next time.